not a nerd.
Nerds.
Nerds.
Nerds!
I'm not kissing a nerd.
What is a nerd?
Nerd! Holy crap, are we nerdy?
Welcome, Nerdables, to episode 112. This week we are talking Doctor Who, and we're going to talk some Battlefront, give you our review, and wrap up our conversation of that game, and probably never speak of it again. We're also going to be talking about George Lucas finally making a statement about his involvement, or lack of involvement, in the new Star Wars movie, and Star Wars going forward. And then we'll see if there's anything else we can fit into the show. So joining me are Chris, Ethan, and Sebastian.
Hello.
Welcome again, guys, since we seem to had some technical difficulty the first time. So let's talk Doctor Who first, since Chris and Ethan don't really have much of involvement in that.
Yeah, we can get it out of the way quickly. So the Clara is gone.
We should
now.
say spoilers.
Spoilers, yes.
And
jump ahead if you haven't seen it.
Yes.
But Clara is gone finally.
Finally. Are you happy she's gone?
I'm a little happy she's gone because I like the actress a lot. I think she did a really good job. The character over time became very grating on me, and it's one of those things like, yeah, she died, and it was like, oh, it was very somber, but in her own way, kind of like it was her time. Like her arrogance got so many people killed.
Yes,
it was about time that something happened to her.
And they even stated that in this episode where, you know, she has gotten too arrogant. I mean, a couple of times.
Yeah, she thinks it's like, oh, you travel with the Doctor for 6 months and you suddenly think you're the smartest person in the universe. You're getting a lot of people killed. It's time for you to go.
Do you think that when she was first introduced, that this demise fits with it?
I think so. Because
they seem to have gotten away from the impossible girl that they had with Matt, and
and because that was also a different character too.
Yes,
in her own way. I liked it. I thought it was a really, really good finale for her. She's not my favorite companion. I just wish they would go back to the Russell T Davies, like one companion a season.
Yes.
You know, I know Stephen Moffat's kind of going classic by having someone that's going to stick around for a while, but I liked, you know, new characters all the time. But that's just me. That's personal preference.
Well, there's a lot of harkening back in this episode.
Yes.
We saw the Ood. We saw Cybermen. Retcon was in it.
Yep.
The drug that Torchwood uses to wipe people's minds.
Yes.
That, to me, that was a great little Easter egg to put in there.
Yeah, and it's still to sort of nod, like, hey, Torchwood's still canon to Doctor Who.
Yes.
Although he disappears a lot. I always feel bad for the Torchwood guys. Like, where'd the Doctor go? You children of Earth, you know, all that, all those storylines. Like, you really should have been here to help out.
Well, Children of Earth was the one that had Peter Capaldi in it.
Yes,
and apparently they've already referenced the first appearance of Peter Capaldi in the Doctor Who universe.
Yeah,
but apparently Russell T Davies had a big plan already set to why there's so many different looks to why Peter Capaldi's character, or Peter Capaldi as the actor, shows up so many different times.
Because he's a good actor. I know that he had his own explanation, and I don't think we'll ever get to see that come to fruition.
When Stephen Moffat announced that he was going to be bringing Peter Capaldi to Doctor Who, he called up Russell T Davies and said, "All right, what was your plan?"
Right, but the plan is different the moment he takes over, because it's going to make it his own.
It is, but he also said that because he was saved and he was not supposed to be by the 10th Doctor, that it threw that character's his family tree basically out of whack in time. So when Russell T Davies, or when in Torchwood, he kills himself and kills his family, basically ending his bloodline.
Right.
He puts his family back in order.
Right. And I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and the Doctor remembers this face and uses it this time to remind him to always make sure that he keeps things in line.
Yeah, no, I thought the explanation's kind of clever. I wish they, you know, again, the what ifs of actually seeing Russell T Davies do it, who I think
could have done it better.
Who I think could have done it a little bit better, or at least they're both very heavy-handed writers. But Stephen Moffat, you know, is like a bad magician trying to hide his heavy-handedness. Yes. And Russell T Davies is like, no, it's Doctor Who. Let's have some fun.
Right.
You know, and I kind of, you know, they have different styles, and you can appreciate both.
Well, when I first heard the explanation that they gave to the whole Peter Capaldi thing, it sounded like an internet fan, you know,
Yeah.
Because you see them with Pixar, with all these other ones where they try to tie everything together and make sense of things.
Yeah.
You see it with Star Wars. Even with the Star Wars Indiana Jones and the Nazis thing.
Right.
Where everybody comes up with their own fan theories.
Right, and then in the comics for that, they actually found, like, Indiana Jones and Short Round found the Falcon crash landed on Earth just as a fun joke.
Yes. But, so they do things like that in order to, but this is what it felt like to me when I heard this explanation.
Yeah.
It was like, man, some fan came up with this and they went, it works. Let's use it.
Yeah, it was really, I've enjoyed it. The season itself has kind of been meh for me.
Yeah.
I don't think they needed to bring Missy back or the Master, whichever.
I like her character.
I like her character and I like her, but I already got one season with her, and it's like, give me more time. I feel like he sort of is constantly revisiting the same themes.
Yes.
And that's my biggest issue. Is like, I don't need the Master recovered for the third time, fourth time. Well, technically the fourth time, because you got the Master twice with Russell T Davies.
Yes.
And you've got him, or now her, twice with twice in a row with Stephen Moffat. It's like, I want something different. Otherwise, I like the episode. Did
you like going to Diagon Alley?
Yeah, there's a lot of really fun stuff, but again,
it was because it really looks like, because everybody keeps saying it's the dodgy part of Diagon Alley.
Yeah,
which it looks like it. I honestly think that they went to that set, repurposed it for this film.
Of course, yeah,
because it looks exactly like it.
Yeah,
or for this TV show. There were a lot of little things in there. Like I said, I thought it was time for Clara to go.
Yeah,
I liked her, but she is very wearing on you. The way that they portrayed her this season is beginning to be very arrogant, even more so than the Doctor.
Right. Who at least he has the age and experience to warrant a little bit of arrogance.
Yes.
It's like she doesn't, and I know that's what he's. If that's sort of a reaction that the character can elicit, that means it's done decently enough.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's almost like they flipped roles.
Right. Right.
She became the Doctor, and he became the companion.
Right.
And Moffat and everybody's always said, well, the companions are the forerunners of the show.
Right.
But this is what it felt like this season, was that she was the Doctor and he was,
or at least she was trying to be.
Correct.
She was trying to be.
Do you want to see him pick up a companion real soon?
I mean, it either I could go either way. Like, I don't need a companion right off the bat. I mean, even if it was like 1 or 2 episodes without one until he finds the next one, or if the next episode is a good introduction episode. That's all for me. That depends on how well it's written.
Right.
They did the Doctor. I mean, with the movies that David Tennant did, where he would have like one companion just for the little mini movie,
right,
and then move on. And I thought that stuff was really cool too. So
yeah. Well, they've already announced that River Song will be coming back for the Christmas special.
Right, and I'm still waiting for the day we actually get her character send off, because that's another character that's like, it's my rule of like Galactus. Like, the more you use them, the less interesting they become, because you've learned too much about them now.
Yes.
So there's no mystery. So for her, I would really like the final send off, him giving her the screwdriver, because the first production photo with Peter Capaldi was the sonic screwdriver she uses.
Was it? I missed that.
Yeah, that's the first production still before they just sort of had him continue on with Matt Smith's sonic screwdriver. They didn't design a new one. This
would be cool if this is her first meeting of him, his last meeting of her.
Right. Yes. If they even if they did if the Christmas special was like their first meeting, I would like that a lot.
Yeah.
And then move on.
It would be a good send-off. I mean, a complete send-off for that character, because it would wrap up the very last thing with the Russell T Davies episode that started it all off with River Song.
Yeah. So that'd be nice.
It would be very nice to have that.
And again, it's it's not the character's fault that they're overused. It's them just constantly going back. It's like, again, she's a great actress and she's made the character really, really fun. So.
Yes. So with the Doctor, we started seeing some of the War Doctor, I guess you could say, coming out.
Yeah.
The almost the Chris Eccleston Doctor coming out.
Yeah.
With when Clara was dying.
Yeah, very regretful and somber.
Uh-huh. Do you like that Doctor?
I do, because I like Chris Eccleston a lot, and I know his hard time with the production kept him from doing another season, but I think it was a very good way to sort of get people into the character, someone you can relate to, someone who has the pain and the flaws.
Yes.
And then you can jump into, like, David Tennant, who's very happy, and Matt Smith, who's kind of like this zany, wacky character. So, yeah, it was a good way to ease people in, and for me, the Peter Capaldi Doctor sort of represents, like, all the facets of the different Doctors, and... that's an interesting way to handle it, and it'll be interesting to see what they do for the next one.
I like the fact with him that they have him where he is one of the older Doctors.
Yes, which I personally prefer. I always my general was like he should be an old guy, and they went young because it's you gotta ease people into.
But it also when they went back to the movie to the 50th anniversary,
right?
It made sense the way they said it, of how he tried to get away from what he was, so he kept getting younger and younger.
Yeah.
And I like with the Peter Capaldi Doctor that he has that whim and that childlike quality to him.
It's I've always sort of seen the modern versions of the Doctors as like very bizarre, like the stages of coping with grief.
Yes.
And Peter Capaldi's finally just acceptance.
Yes, exactly.
When you sort of have you've got like depression, who's 9, and you've got sort of David Tennant's Doctor is denial, and Matt Smith's is not anger, but he's in his own way, sort of like an ignorance or a pleading.
Yes.
Trying to plead with reality.
Yes.
And then you get to Peter Capaldi, who's just sort of you jump into acceptance. And moving on, which I like.
I know, and I love that. And the great thing is that every once in a while, and this is Peter Capaldi as an actor, is you start to see the other Doctors every once in a while, just little,
in him,
little qualities peek out a little bit in him.
And because he's a lifelong fan, that's something that's easy for him to do, because he was watching since the very, very early shows.
Yes.
And it's great to see his old fan letters that he wrote as a kid to them, that are out there for the internet to see. That's really, really cool. So I appreciate that.
No, I totally agree. I love that. Is there anything that you want to see more with this Doctor, or something different? Where would you like them to take this Doctor now that he doesn't have a companion and it's basically a reboot? This is his first time.
It's a new beginning again.
Yes.
I would like to see them avoid, as much as it's nice to see classic monsters and classic worlds, I would rather them jump into, okay, let's start telling new stories with all new characters.
No, I agree. I want to see more stories. I want to see them expand the Doctor Who universe.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do, and I would just like them, instead of doing, okay, I've seen the Ood a million times now again. Let's jump into something different, just make up something new, make up new monsters, make up new, like they were doing with, Russell T Davies was, he brought back old monsters, but he also created all new characters too. I like to go back to that. Let's start seeing brand new stuff.
The Zygons were a nice touch, because we hadn't seen Zygons since
in a while.
What, the fifth Doctor?
Right, and then they did a little bit of them with the where the Doctors meet up, because I think one of them was disguised.
Right.
As Queen Elizabeth.
Right. Oh, no, yeah. When they brought him in the 50th anniversary, and then they dropped it. And then
they came back again, and that was a weird story. I still don't know how I feel about it.
It
was funny, but it was also okay.
Did you like that they brought in Billie Piper, but not as Rose?
Yeah, again, it's references, and if Stephen Moffat can avoid references, this is why you'll like this episode, because references, then I think he'll be fine.
But no, and I like there were, and like you said, this one had a lot of references.
Yeah,
there must be something with British culture about the hidden streets and maps and stuff, and
Oh yeah, well,
because you have
a lot of that's from the war too. The underground, and
a lot of that is London itself.
Yes, a lot of that is the way London is constructed to avoid sieges and stuff like that.
Right.
So that's just by design of the country. So a lot of people, either don't know. I mean, even America has sort of that history, especially on the East Coast. They'll have forgotten subway lines or pneumatic transit tunnels underneath other subway tunnels, completely preserved, just walled off by brick that people don't know about.
Yeah.
Just hidden lines out of use. for generations. So I mean, I think the good stuff. I mean, even America has like Los Angeles here. You know, a lot of people don't know, but there's sort of that joke, like the Rocketeer with the Nazis, you know, in California invading Hollywood was a very real threat. But you can actually go see the secret Nazi bunkers here in Los Angeles where they were preparing for the invasions. And it's kind of spooky to think about. Well, you know, I think every place has got its secret history, and they use it very well in Doctor Who.
Yes. Well, speaking of the Nazis, one of the big shows that came out this weekend, and we didn't really touch this at the opening.
That's a statement you don't hear very often.
Speaking of the Nazis?
Speaking of the Nazis.
Actually, you do now because they're the only bad guys you're allowed to use anymore. Everybody else has its own defense league.
Yes.
Nazis need better PR.
Yeah.
Even the Germans don't like Nazis.
Man in High Castle was. Do you think it's going to get overlooked because of Jessica Jones? Because I know we're going to cover Jessica Jones in a minute, and I didn't. This is one of those shows where I really wanted to see it.
That's a tough one. I don't know.
It's because it seems like it is an Amazon Prime show, which Amazon is still trying to catch up to Netflix.
Right.
And you know, I mean, all of them are. You know, it's one of those things. It's all, you know. Burger King, McDonald's,
well, I think it's also Netflix has a lot more subscribers.
They do have a lot more subscribers.
You're going to see more with Jessica Jones. You know, for example, like me, I'm just someone who doesn't have Amazon Prime. It's a show I'd like to watch,
right?
But I don't have it. So I mean, obviously, like someone like me, we're not going to get the views on that show. But Jessica Jones, since I have Netflix, I'm going to be watching. So.
I think it was also Jessica Jones was promoted and marketed a little bit more.
Yeah, a little bit more.
Although it also has Daredevil in front of it too.
It does have Daredevil.
A team of people that have already created a hit show.
Man in the High Castle is getting better reviews than Jessica Jones, though, on average, from a lot of different sites and from different people. And it was also, I remember watching the pilot in January,
right,
when they did their like, hey, check these out. It was their highest rated and highest voted on pilot, which is why they selected it. It's also a really, really great work of alternate history fiction. If you've never read it, listener, go find yourself a copy of Philip K. Dick's The Man in the High Castle. It's stunning because it's Philip K. Dick. He wrote...
Wait, somebody did an adaptation of a Philip K. Dick
they
story?
did. They did do
That's
one.
weird because he's never had anything before.
If you love Blade Runner, go check it out too. But he wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. But some of Philip K. Dick talking about like him going into the book, it's also a book that is open-ended as its ending and never got a sequel because he basically said doing all of my research for what the plans were for the United States when the invasion was eventually supposed to come, and never did.
Right.
But he said to go into that dark place, and he learned so many things he never wanted to know that he could just never bring himself to do it unless he was going to have a collaborator to help him write it, because he just wanted to, like, I learned too much about what was coming for us.
Sure. And
I can't go back to that universe anymore. And the book is absolutely amazing. So just, you know, one or two sentence synopsis. You have a world, the Nazis win. The TV show is very close and yet very modern. In the original short story, in the original book, it's really short. It's only like 300 pages. The thing that people are smuggling is a book. That is, you know, been created by the Man in the High Castle as as his work of fiction to sort of promote fighting the Nazis and the Japanese.
Almost like a propaganda type
Yes,
thing.
and in the TV show so far that I've been watching, I'm absolutely loving it. They find film reels, and the idea is that is the Man in the High Castle a real person, and is he creating these film reels? But knowing the book, like in the book, the Nazis are going into space because it's already into the late 60s. They're looking to, establish themselves.
Right.
Nazis in space.
Exactly, Nazis in space. And the idea
That right there just sounds like a great movie.
They did that movie already.
I'm sure
did
they?
Yeah, they did the Nazis on the Moon movie.
Oh,
They went to the moon.
They're all those like D-rated like horror movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That Nazi zombie one that everyone thought was a great idea, and then they
Dead
saw it
Snow.
like, that is terrible.
Right. So in the show, this reel is being passed around, but it has reels of like, FDR and, like the surrender of the Japanese. It's got Winston Churchill, fighting the Nazis on the home front and winning. And it freaks people out. And that's sort of the idea, is that, you've got characters who are sort of drawn into the, like, what is this film? Joining the resistance and seeing the world that could have been.
Now,
it plays on that idea that the world we have, the world you're in is the wrong world, and the world that you're supposed to be in is the world that we're seeing.
Right.
And seeing those characters that are looking at a world that looks very much like ours and going, that looks so much better.
Right.
Which, in a way, is almost a sense of, with all this dark fiction about how terrible everything is, it's almost like a hopeful thing where you have a story now where you're like, things could be a lot worse.
Things could be, yeah. And it's because it's true, because you have, so in essence, you have America split into halves. You have the Japanese Pacific states.
Now, is it, because I was looking at this, it looks almost like it was like the western half of the United States was like
is Japanese controlled
by, like a canyon or something.
So it's not the canyon, but the Rocky Mountains is the neutral zone in the book and in the show, where the people who fled. So you have the Japanese Pacific states, and they go into other areas like parts of like lower Europe and into a little bit of Africa is controlled by like the New Roman Empire, which is Italy.
I was gonna say, yeah, Italy doesn't really have much representation in the United States.
Right. Japan has taken over Asia and Russia and the west coast of America, including Alaska. The Nazis have all of Europe. They have southern half of, I think they have the southern half of Africa in the book. And in the United States, the East Coast, that middle ground is the Rockies. But you already have like an ethnically cleansed East Coast of the United States, and then you have people living under the Japanese Empire and are Japanese citizens now, and the focus is San Francisco in the show. And it's fascinating because in the book and in the show you now have the divide, because the Nazis only let Japan help out, and there was never the intention to live equally with them. And in the show you have a world where the A-bomb was dropped on Washington, D.C., and the H-bomb has now been developed, but the plan is Hitler is dying. He's getting old. He has syphilis, and he's
of course he would. I mean, that's where.
But he was also. I mean, and if you look at some World War I history, there's a lot of thought that he was gassed in World War I by the early mustard gas and the biological warfare that changed. That that there's speculation. I will not speak on it, but there's always that like. Maybe he got fucked up by the gas, which turned him into a nutcase.
No, don't make him the.
No, I'm not. But that's sort of the implication, at least in this, is that he went through a lot, and he's gonna die, and Goebbels is gonna take over. There people already.
There's also the rumor that he had Parkinson's.
Yes,
that's why the speeches are so crazy, because he couldn't stop moving. So
and in
he
the show,
hit it by moving deliberately so much. Because
they've also said he had Asperger's.
In the show, they actually do mention there's like one point where he's giving a speech with his hand in his pocket, and they're like, look, the end is coming soon. And they say he's got Parkinson's, or we don't know. But the powers in the Nazi and the Reich are going to take over, and then the war against Japan is coming, and the threat is that basically they're going to bomb San Francisco with the H-bomb once Hitler dies to then continue their push.
Right.
So it's very interesting.
What? You can't trust the Nazis?
Can't trust them. And then you have sort of that divide, because you have like the Japanese ambassador. He uses the I Ching, which is like a philosophical and Japanese sort of like an Asian philosophy, like sort of like predicting the future. Like the idea is that you can destinies are laid out by man, but the future is sort of written, in this weird way.
Okay, so you've watched both.
I'm about halfway through both, and I've come to the point where I have to pick Jessica Jones or Man in the High Castle.
And I was going to ask you, because I saw you put that on Facebook, that you have to pick now. Which one are you enjoying more? Or can you even make that?
Why can't it be like the little Mexican girl meme? Why not both?
Why not both? Yeah, that's the tough part. Is
I was wondering where he was.
Yeah, from the taco commercials.
The taco commercial.
¿Por qué no los dos?
Yeah, they're like.
And then they
never.
You've never seen that commercial?
No,
well,
I've never seen it.
It's pretty funny, but that's the tough part, because like. At one point, I'm going like, I'm watching Jessica Jones, and then it's like, wait,
Chris is looking it up right now.
Was she fighting the Nazis? I don't know.
Is Jessica Jones fighting the Nazis?
I've got I'm at the point where like I like both. I like Man in the High Castle more, but I think that's because the story is really well acted, and I already know Alias. Alias is one of my favorite books, so I'm and Man in the High Castle is also a favorite of mine. But I've come to the point where it's like Man in the High Castle is really.
Wait, have I seen this? What the hell is this?
I'm sure you've seen it.
I'm sure you've seen it. It's like that. It's like, oh, do we want the hard shell tacos?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Tacos?
Why don't they have the full commercial? They just have.
Yeah, I think it's El Paso.
They just,
the name
there
of the
it
company.
is. 16 seconds. All right. I'm just gonna check this. Oh no!
See, I think I've seen this now. I've heard that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm kind of at
Okay,
a
so
place.
We can't go into a lot of detail.
I remember that now. That's sweet. Oh my god, now I want to talk about it.
We can't go into a lot of detail about Jessica Jones because Chris only got 20 minutes into the first episode.
I like it. I like Daredevil more.
Let's talk about Jessica Jones. We can talk about something else I haven't watched.
Yeah.
So Doctor Who, Man in the High Castle, which I can't watch because I'm not going to pay for 16 different fucking streaming services anymore, and then I just haven't had a chance to get through
Jessica Jones. I like Daredevil a little bit more, but that is not anything. That does not count against.
That's one of the problems I have with like the reaction to all of this is so many people have said, well, it's not Daredevil, or it's better than Daredevil, or I like Daredevil more, or I like this. It's like
it's very different. But it's
just like everything that I saw seemed to be comparing it to Daredevil, and I understand why, but there's just a point like it's just like every movie is like, well, it's Die Hard meets Made in Manhattan. It's just an effing movie.
Well, it's not Captain America, but it is.
Yeah,
Ant-Man.
it's just like just sitting there going.
It's a tough.
And if you want to rate
to
stuff, that's
too.
fine. But when you have just two things, I think you got to get into like we rate Marvel movies because there's now 10 of them.
Yeah, there's a lot to choose from.
You know, when this is like, well, it is, and yeah, I've heard both. I've heard some people. One of my friends online is just going, I know I'm not going to like the show more because Daredevil's my favorite Marvel character, and that was the perfect representation of Daredevil that I've always wanted to see on screen, and so that's always going to be a favorite. My bias towards Thor. Thor as the first film is one of my favorites because I love Thor, and I think that was a great representation of Thor. I'm Thor!
I totally understand that, though.
Yeah, and it becomes that people will look at it and see, oh, they're saying Daredevil's bad now, and I'm like, it's not.
No,
and people don't qualify that, and they shouldn't have to. It's not saying that Daredevil is crap and this is better, or the other way around. Going, well, I enjoy Daredevil more, so this must be a piece of crap. You're going to enjoy both.
That's why I felt the need to qualify, because I like Daredevil more. I have not finished Jessica Jones, so it's like by the end of it could be different. But I'm also like, no, I think at the same point in the story, for me, Daredevil was it was a little more interesting because you have a more direct superhero transition versus Jessica Jones, who's a detective. She's already got superpowers, and I like the noir styling. I like the voiceovers and stuff. Yeah. It's very different, which is
the people that I know that finished it said that the one thing that they liked more with Jessica Jones is it seemed to be more consistent throughout in terms of a thoroughfare, and it helped.
I could see that.
You see kind of those startings of the Purple Man in the very first episode.
Yes. Yeah.
When she's on the railing. She's on the fire escape or whatever, and wherefore in Daredevil there really wasn't anything until you saw Fisk in episode 3 or 4.
Right.
And then that kind of became it was just like, oh, he's here and he's beating people up, and then he sees Nurse, what's her face, the night nurse, and then and it was just like all these different elements came in those first 3 or 4 episodes before they finally found this idea of what was going on with Karen and what was going on with Fisk, and it became much more clear.
That is why, though, I did like I like David Tennant and I like the Purple Man, but I like just Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk is. I mean, they're both very scary villains.
Yes,
they're both very different.
Granted, because I've never watched Doctor Who, as we've made a point of it earlier in the podcast, but watching David Tennant in all these episodes that I've watched so far, he is actually a great actor.
The funniest tweet I saw is, now I go back and watch Doctor Who, and I can't help but think that he kidnapped all the companions. Forced them to go. And it's like, I'm now watching Doctor Who as if he's forcing all of these people against their will.
That's pretty good.
Like, that's hilarious.
Yeah. I like, they're both very different villains, but I think they're both great actors too. But Vincent D'Onofrio brings there's a subtlety to Vincent D'Onofrio, but I think that's also the character, the way he's written.
But it's also the scale of the character.
Yeah, but with Vincent D'Onofrio, he plays off very clearly. He has a mental disability. He may have Asperger's. He was abused as a child, and a lot of that comes through really subtly. The way he speaks, his mannerisms,
right?
The way he sort of he'll have moments where he's got almost when he gets his girlfriend, he's got this very childlike.
But even when he's staring at the white painting.
But then there's other moments where he can give that completely dead inside look,
right?
And it's really, really frightening. And David Tennant, he's playing a very different character,
well,
but he's also playing him to the strengths. But just Vincent D'Onofrio, the level of acting he brought, because he superseded everybody in that show.
Yeah, but look at when in the comic book, when there's the one scene where the Purple Man has Jessica Jones there, and she's kind of like almost in a girl school, a schoolgirl outfit, and he's looking at the Daily Globe that has the Daredevil thing.
Yeah.
He's got the two girls in the bed with all the money and everything, and I mean, there's cussing and stuff in that comic book. There's things where he's looking at it like fuck Daredevil, fuck this,
Yeah.
He's more of a loose cannon compared to Fisk.
Well, Fisk doesn't see himself as the villain.
Yeah,
Purple Man
That's
is-
true. That's the other
Fisk,
thing. Yes.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Purple Man is a classic.
He's so consumed
maniacal.
with power.
He's a classic maniacal supervillain. He knows
Right.
what he's doing is wrong, and he's going to do it.
And he doesn't care
Fisk
because
thinks
who's going to
he's
stop
right.
him? Right.
Fisk knows what he's doing is wrong, but he believes in the end game.
Yes.
He's trying to save the city from itself and all that other garbage.
It's he believes the ends justify the means.
Yes.
He's like I'm in a position of power because someone has to do what I do.
For me,
It's the Ra's al Ghul from
It is.
Batman Begins. Someone needs to destroy these cities so that something better can spring up
Right.
from it.
Right.
that for me the best villains are always the villains who believe they're right,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what makes them compelling. Especially this version of
Well,
Wilson
Sebastian,
Fisk.
Hitler believed he was right.
He was, but that's also. I mean, if we're yeah,
I see a lot.
He's such a great villain.
Jokes aside, though, that's why there's this lasting intrigue by him as the big player in World War
Oh
II.
yeah, they just released
I see a lot of circles
comic,
within circles here today.
the Hitler, basically it's the biopic. They released it last week, and someone asked, like, why would they release a comic like this? And I said, it's important to know who Hitler was.
Right.
Sure.
Like, this man was certifiably insane, and he took an entire country and made it his bitch to do his bidding. You have a man sitting at a podium who has dark brown hair, a little mustache, and brown eyes, and says everyone
The
who
biggest
deserves
comic
to
thing.
live should be blonde, 6 foot tall, and blue-eyed. Mein Führer, no, stop. It's okay.
Yeah, and I
Going
mean,
to fix it.
that's what
I will be
he's a bad
blonde
guy.
and blue-eyed one day.
But that's what makes him a compelling bad guy historically. And I still think we're too close to the war. I take Dan Carlin, who does the Hardcore History podcast, which is amazing. But I take sort of that same stance, like we're still too close to the war.
But
for
we're
a-
still people
for a good-
alive from that.
Yeah, but for good analysis
Right.
and for good retrospection on World War II, we're still too close to it.
Mhm.
Because there's still a lot of people who have been personally affected, and that can sort of color.
Oh, I think you're still too close to the Civil War. I mean, you have all these wars that we just put like people say, Civil War is slavery. It's not just slavery. There's
Right.
a lot of different issues. Slavery was the big part of it, but it was
Yeah,
what
it was
slavery meant to
states'
the southern
rights
states,
and-
states' rights, and it was people agendas. It's the same thing here. What did World War II come out of? It came out of World War
One
I.
and
It came out of what the Allies did to the Germans at the end of World War I, which is what the United States tried to do to Japan after World War II. And Japan decided, well, instead of doing it militarily, and we're just going to make better electronics, and we're just going to have a better economy.
they
than
built their
everybody.
industry up.
Yeah.
And they were more. They were like that's both halves. While there was a lot of animosity post-war, there was still like the helping hand. Eventually America.
Well, and
left
also
the-
communism came through Eastern Europe before
Right.
it reached Southeast Asia.
Right.
It was once Eastern Europe was established, Stalin and the Communist Party is like, okay, now we're going to go worry about over here, and that's how you get
Yeah.
Korea and Vietnam and everything like that. I mean,
Nerdables, where we discuss world history.
yeah. Well, that's what makes so much of this. There's people who will argue what the different factors for World War II are.
Right. No.
We're talking about it in High Castle. You're talking about the Japanese and the Germans. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, Germany was furious. It's like, no,
We're not-
no, son of a bitch! Now they're coming. We did this before. We fought this war for a long time, and then the Americans showed up, and they're just like, so we're a bunch of young hicks that have guns and. Okay, the war's over.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
the United States in World War I had an involvement of less than a year. It ended a war that had already existed for half a decade,
Right.
for all intents and purposes. The same thing here.
Yeah, they were already.
So that to me, when you were talking, yeah, it's like 19.
There was 1914, 1917 is when the U.S. joined World War I, but it was
Yeah.
also just after the United States said we don't go overseas to fight international monsters.
We only defend our
Right.
borders.
Well,
Yeah.
that was isolationism that Woodrow Wilson. But you could put a lot of things that World War I started because Woodrow Wilson decided we're going to be isolationist. We're not going to join the League of Nations. We're not going to do anything overseas.
Right.
We're not going to do
We're
any
gonna
of
take
this.
care
And
of
then finally they're like,
ourselves.
well.
And then it's like maybe we can help out to protect democracy across the globe.
And now,
and in its own way, that sort of turned America into the world police.
and now everybody's going, hey, America, Come on, go back.
Right.
Defend
Well,
your own borders.
And you look at Japan in World War II, they did it because we cut off we basically placed embargoes on their imports. You know, they couldn't get oil from overseas.
Because they were using it to brutalize the Chinese.
Right, and then they basically joined.
They never invited China. They invaded China. They could have taken all the islands they wanted to, but once they invaded China, it was kind of the end of it.
What about
anyways,
Jessica Jones?
See, Jessica Jones in World War II.
That's why I can't watch both at the same time. So no, I'm enjoying both. I'm leaning towards Man in the High Castle just because I'm more intrigued by the changes being made, which are they're not a lot of changes, but they're really good changes. Like the film reel finding the film reels is inspired, and that's where I'm at. Like, I kind of need to know how they're going to finish this off because I know there's a season 2 coming for that because the book is open-ended and it's done. It's a really short book. I need to know how this goes.
Do you think that Jessica Jones, the reason people like Daredevil more than Jessica Jones is more a superhero show than Daredevil was?
I don't
know because even when you sort of look at like the review,
I don't see that many people that like Daredevil more than Jessica Jones. It's pretty split.
When you look at the review aggregations, even from user reviews, Jessica Jones is like if Daredevil, like this is just me expounding. If Daredevil was something like a 9.6 or 9.7, Jessica Jones has only been rated like a 9.3 or a 9.4. We're not that far. We're not talking about We're not talking about a big difference in the grand scheme of people liking either show.
Right. So I do agree with you where I don't see it as a superhero show. But because she has superpowers, and the main villain has superpowers, and another
I think they're being more
character,
careful with it.
They're doing.
I like it more than Supergirl.
I was going to say the same thing.
Supergirl's such a different beast, though.
Yes,
I love how they have addressed her abilities.
Yeah.
And how even though that she has the ability of flight, how they've gone about addressing it.
Right. They're taking a lot of care. Because I'm sure
well, in the comic it barely shows up in that.
Yeah, it does.
It wasn't until towards the end. Like when you're reading the comic, I don't even remember that they introduced that she had powers for like the longest time.
Right.
I'm trying to remember now.
But I think a lot of that being carefully done is because they couldn't beat Supergirl to release. The last thing they want is like, well, she's got super strength and can fly. It's basically like a dark version of Supergirl.
Right.
Because I know that's the comparison people would make.
I love the relationship between her and Patsy Trish.
Yeah, Patsy Walker, the Hellcat.
Yes,
I hope they actually do something with that.
As soon as they went Trish Walker, I went because I tried to stay away from this, and I went, oh, no, and then all the little things that they've said and done, I'm like,
I'm hoping they do something with it, and
they have so many characters they want to do.
Yeah.
I just don't know if they have time to do it.
Right, which is fine. I'd rather they name drop and then move on really fast.
This is some characters that it's not a problem having it as a supporting character.
Yeah.
Or you do something if you have an interesting story with Hellcat that you can tell in 4 hours. That's not a bad thing.
Right.
No.
Do 2-hour releases or 4 1-hour releases. Just say it's just 4 episodes.
Well, apparently it came out last week that some of the early concept or early script idea had Captain Marvel in this.
No, Carol Danvers is a huge part of Jessica Jones' life.
Yeah.
But
that they were, and it looks to me like they were going to have the whole group there.
It'd be interesting to see if I'm sure at some point somebody said, no, movies.
No, well that's the thing.
That was
again,
it.
you can't.
It's the Harley Quinn thing.
And somebody
It's not even the Harley Quinn thing. It's the Star Wars thing. It's getting rid of the EU. You're not going to make this series and then turn to whoever's going to do Captain Marvel in 2 years and go, by the way, you have to make this fit.
Right.
True.
It's just you're not going to do that for a film. It would be like introducing Doctor Strange in Daredevil for a couple of episodes. It wasn't if they had Carol just show up and say, "Hey," that would have been fine. If they went with the story that was in the book or some version of it, Carol's in it a lot.
Right.
Jessica's one of her best friends,
Sure.
and that's where you find out that Jessica used to be a member of the Avengers. That's not going to happen in here, obviously, because the Avengers haven't existed long enough.
Right. When she
But
obviously
that was a
she
big
has
part
one
of it, yeah. And then she's actually erased that from her mind, or whatever was it.
Well, she does make mention of it in some of the later episodes.
Yeah. I'm purposely trying not to say certain things because I know Chris hasn't seen it, and
So-
Well, I didn't say anything that's pertaining to it. I just said she made mention of it.
I do. There is an episode where they kind of tie it into the Marvel U, and they do it in a way that I really respected and enjoyed.
Because I like the way Daredevil handled it by the newspapers hanging on Ben Urich's wall.
Well, this one they went into a couple of times a little bit more. I mean,
that sounds like they're wetting their feet.
Yeah.
It's again, it's just a little thing to tell you what universe it's in.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
You know, if it becomes I'm gonna go find out what's going on with Hulk.
Unlike Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is like every week, hey, we're Avengers. Remember that Avengers thing? Remember that Cap thing? Remember
Agents
that
of
Iron
S.H.I.E.L.D.,
Man?
just it's such a weird relationship. I liked that last episode.
The last episode was really good.
I enjoyed it. I found myself enjoying it much more than I normally would.
That's why I told Beth, I'm like, this show's gotten good, right? It's gotten a lot better than it was.
A lot better than it was.
Well, but even a lot better than a lot better.
I'm still on the fence of good. I'm watching it every week.
Grant Ward's character has gotten so much better.
He should have always been the bad guy anyway.
They got him fighting lessons. It looks like even.
They finally got a choreographer.
Yes.
That first season was trash.
Daisy's gotten much better. She's grown into that character.
Yeah. I'm tired of that character. I'll say this is the difference in the last episode. I liked Fitz.
Fitz and Simmons have gotten.
I liked Fitz. I thought his arc with this,
Mm-hmm.
again, spoilers if you're not watching it, his arc of attempting to save someone that Gemma is in love with,
Yes.
because it's the right thing to do, as much as he would not want to do it, has actually been very interesting. As much as I hated him in the first season, the second season he got very tired of this brain dead sort of thing. I like him in this season.
Did you?
So that's, if anything, I'm in the middle of it going, damn it, I like it. I like it. But they also, I think they really got a lot of those nuances out of the way. He's a much harder character.
Yes.
He's not, those first ones, he's just kind of like not the bumbling idiot, but just sort of like the new.
It's Fitz.
I'm a kid.
Simmons.
And the new dynamic for this, I think, is a lot better. So.
Did you like the fact that they have Hydra that's like predating the Red Skull and everything now?
Yeah, basically they're doing the old. They're doing Hickman's shield, but as Hydra.
Right.
Because Hickman's shield was the idea that the shield actually started in ancient Egypt.
Yes.
To protect the planet from invasion, and now it's Hydra's the other way around. It's the Hydra was trying for however long to figure out how to get this creature back or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Hydra's an actual Hydra.
I like the idea.
No, it's different. Like I said, I've never had a problem with extrapolating and making changes if it makes sense.
Now, look, I love the fact that you do have something like S.H.I.E.L.D. that, in a sense, is like Supergirl. I mean, it's not, and even Flash and Arrow to a degree. I mean, obviously it's not written as well.
They're supposed to cater to the widest net of people as possible.
Yes, and then you have these Netflix shows that are very noir. They're very, grounded, like exactly what they said they wanted to do. They are very street level.
Yes.
Well, they're very anti-movie. This is the problem that we said we had with S.H.I.E.L.D. from the start. Is S.H.I.E.L.D. was trying desperately to be the movies, and it can't. It'll never have that budget. It will never have that ability. It'll never have that reach. Doing Daredevil, Jessica Jones, the characters they chose, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, even Iron Fist. You do Iron Fist as a martial arts, you're like, it's a kung fu show. They've done that before.
Right.
You can do it. It's cheap. They didn't sit there and go, we're going to make, we're gonna do the Black Knight show. You didn't do anybody who's a major Avenger. That we're not going to do Captain Marvel as a TV show. We can't. It's not going to work.
Right.
When you have even a big TV show like S.H.I.E.L.D., you're going, we're going to do the Inhumans. We're going to do superpowers, and we're going to do all of this. We're going to have this big ship and all these sort of bases and stuff like that. And that first season, there's no money, and it looks like crap.
But it does work for the Flash.
It works for the Flash because there's nothing to compare it to. If you have the Flash and it's actually supposed to be, if the Flash existed in the Man of Steel universe, and you would watch Man of Steel and then watch Flash after, you'd be like, well, no, it just doesn't look right.
Do you think once the DC universe starts,
But they're not connected.
They're
That's
not
the thing.
connected,
They're not
and they
connected.
said they will not connect them.
If it's not connected, you can understand the differences. You have a Marvel unit. This is what I said the year before S.H.I.E.L.D. came out. You have fans who are going to see Iron Man and Thor and Cap and Avengers, big, huge, massively expensive movies with tons of great effects and acting and scenes and locations and all of these things, and that's what fans who I saw Avengers, S.H.I.E.L.D. from the makers of,
Especially because
so fans that were going to see the Avengers on the screen. And then they saw it in the first episode, the flying car. They tried really hard. Look, the flying car in Hidden Valley. It looks terrible. It
Yes.
looks worse than the matte shots from Star Wars 30 years ago. I mean, it was just that show. In terms of S.H.I.E.L.D., they tried to make that show in the same vein as the movies, and it didn't work. Where when they looked at Daredevil and they said, "We're not trying to make the movies
Right.
at all. We're taking a different character with a different tone, a different sensibility, who lives in a completely different world." If they had made S.H.I.E.L.D. a show really about spies, not about superheroes, and if they had really made it into a spy show,
Kind of like Alias was.
the hell, yeah. If it was S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra from the start,
I would have
been amazing.
It would have been amazing.
but it couldn't have been because
They were
Cap 2's in the
beholden-
way.
Yes.
This is why when people are arguing Flash and Green Arrow should be a part of the DC universe, no, because you can't get those schedules together. They
But
don't
do you
work.
think it's because they like the actors playing these two roles and they don't want
It
to see
doesn't-
anybody
No,
else?
It's not that.
It's that there's a
S.H.I.E.L.D.
lot of
wastes-
rights holders
Yeah,
that are first and foremost your big roadblock.
Mhm.
You have different actors. You're not going to get Grant Gustin, his
Yes.
name.
yeah.
He's not movie quality.
Correct.
I'm sorry. Like he seems like a
Even if
nice
he could
person.
be, the difference is the problem with all of this is your scheduling isn't work. This is exactly what we're talking about. You're going to go to Ben Affleck or Zack Snyder or whoever they get. We stole Jon Favreau from Marvel. He's going to direct Justice League. By the way, make it fit with Green Arrow and Flash, who never mentioned the fact that Metropolis was razed to the ground by
Right.
its greatest hero. It just doesn't work. The schedules don't work. We've
Well, they
seen it
said that with
the
Flash.
first half of S.H.I.E.L.D., the first 3/4 of S.H.I.E.L.D., the first 3/4 of its first season is a complete waste of time.
Kevin Feige has said that though, with matching up, trying to do things in the movies and do on the TV
That's
series.
why they split.
It's really hard because
That's why he's
they're
doing.
like the movies are 2 years ahead of the show, and then
Mhm.
by the time the show catches up to the movies, it's a different storyline going on. And trying to
Yeah.
match those is
Daredevil is
Yeah.
started, shot, produced, and put on the air in what, a year?
Right.
Mhm.
Avengers took almost 3 years.
Yes.
And
to
that's
get
why
it
I
out,
think
so-
that's why I think the way Netflix is handling the material is very smart. Because when they said this takes place after the Battle of New York, that's all you need.
Right.
You don't need anything else. You don't need a single photograph of an Avenger. You don't need any pictures of aliens. But they did it smart. We know why Fisk is there. We know why they're trying to rebuild Hell's Kitchen. And
They used a very small piece.
Did you like the fact that they do show the cityscape of New York, and you see a lot of construction towers?
yes, which is again, it's very smart and it's very calculated. Versus something like Agents of Shield. You know, we've talked about it before. The way they handled their episode that dealt with the Winter Soldier completely ruins it for anybody who didn't watch the movie first.
Right.
You know, and it's like no, you're being really heavy-handed. If Agents of Shield was literally about the Agents of Shield doing international espionage and fighting Hydra, there would be no issue.
I think you could have done the first season of S.H.I.E.L.D. as S.H.I.E.L.D. versus Hydra, have the movie happen, but the movie takes place after the end of the first season, and it's leading towards that point. You know, instead, you have this happening. You're not talking anything about it, and then all of a sudden you see Cap, and you go home and watch S.H.I.E.L.D. the next week, and it's like, oh, great. So Grant's the bad guy, Bill Paxton's the bad guy, and a whole bunch of people that they think are going to be good guys are bad guys. What if they had introduced that very early with this idea that Hydra's sort of in it, or what?
Like they're battling themselves. Like
Yeah,
even
I mean,
like
that's-
it's a cell within
It's just
it.
the fact that it was just a traitor. It was a single traitor.
Right.
If they had introduced Grant as the traitor in episode 2, and you would have followed it as like, oh, it's just one guy who's the traitor.
He's
And
infiltrated.
then
it from Hydra.
and that
He's
has
a
it,
Hydra
and
agent.
then the
infiltrated.
movie happens, and he's not the only one. There's thousands of
Yeah.
people in S.H.I.E.L.D., and the aftermath of that would have been great. Because look at what
You don't
happened
even-
with the second
and here's the
season.
thing,
The
you
second
don't even-
season's much better because they're like you're dealing with this whole aftermath.
Mhm.
But that's the thing is, even if they did that for season 1, they would never have had to have said the word Hydra once.
Right.
And then you get to Cap 2, and you have the it's Hydra.
You just have him as a traitor,
Right.
and then all of a sudden you realize,
You have so many
Holy
other pieces
shit,
that you could pick up.
oh,
too.
yeah.
You could have dropped Hammer as a
Right.
notion.
AIM. You could have gone back
done
to
with
AIM
that.
from
You
Iron
could have done
Man.
the Serpent Society. That's all the Serpent Society is. The whole idea of the Serpent Society is people who've infiltrated these other walks of life,
Right.
and are then using it for their own agendas.
Right, and that's the thing is again, but again,
My phone.
TV, TV on, basic stations. They need to cast the wide net. They need They need as many people as possible and as many demographics
Yeah, and
as
that's the
possible.
difference. It's got to be something different versus
Netflix, who can be like, we're going to make a targeted show. You either like it or you don't.
So going back to the Danvers thing, this is in realizing, reading about that story, I had forgotten that the show was originally supposed to go to ABC.
Yes.
Jessica Jones was supposed to be
Right.
an ABC show.
Right, because they had it in development for a while, and then they sort of abandoned it when
Yeah.
the movies came out. They're like,
yeah,
we
Melissa
can't make
Rosenberg
a
was
series.
developing Jessica television series for ABC 5 years ago, and it never gained traction. And then she says, when it was at ABC Network, I did use Carol Danvers, but between them, then and when it ended up on Netflix, the MCU also shifted away from the universe in the comic book. So in the book, the powers are very out in the open, and the themes are about the other. And the cinematic universe, that's not the mythology, so it was a lot I had to move away from, just in terms of sheer plot. And Carol Danvers got her own movie. So Rosenberg swapped out Danvers for Patsy Walker, so that's how she has that character that's in there.
Well, you remember, I think it was
I don't
3 or
understand. My phone said 1%. You plug it in and it's 10. That makes no sense, man. Come on.
Do you remember 3 or 4 years ago when we were at Comic-Con, we were sitting in Cup of Joe, and they were talking about how there was a Cloak and Dagger in the works, there was a Hawk TV show, there was Jessica Jones, or they were saying a kind of an alias Jessica Jones type thing. They were
there was a
mentioning,
lot of stuff they wanted.
that was even before they got the rights for Daredevil back.
Yeah, and I think that's what changed a lot of things.
Yeah.
When you got Daredevil back, it's like, hey, we've got an idea, because you were never going to make a whole.
Do you think it also has
at
to do
the
with
time when
Disney?
when we said that? Now that you mentioned that, now I remember it, and I remember us talking about it. I'm like, they're never going to do a Hulk show.
Mhm.
Right.
Because you've already had 2 actors play Hulk. You're going to have to find a third. Mark Ruffalo is not doing a weekly
No.
TV series. I'm sorry. He may
Right.
show up. If Mark Ruffalo were to show up on an episode of S.H.I.E.L.D., I would not put it past him. Mark Ruffalo
What
seems
is
like
he
a
doing
wonderful
now?
dude.
He needs the money.
Could you
But
see
he
him
doesn't
do
need
it?
the money. That's the thing.
kidding.
He
Could you
doesn't need the money. He doesn't. What he wants to do with his life in terms of acting, if you look at his choice, he's never going to do a weekly TV series.
Could you have seen him doing
But,
like a
but that's
Netflix
also
show?
that's also the nature of
No.
film and television, though. Buy up the rights to everything, put stuff into production, just for the sake of having something
Right.
on the back burner.
And that's they announced stuff way too early. It's people
Right.
sitting in a room going, "What works? We don't. Okay, we want to do a TV series.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have 10
Start
Marvel
pitching
properties.
ideas.
Alias
Who's it
work.
gonna
People
be?
liked Alias. We can take that, and now we
Right.
can incorporate
And that's
it
what they
into
did.
we're doing.
Yeah,
They
somebody
basically
goes,
said, if we're
"Give
going to
us
do a weekly
10
TV
pitches."
series, we're going to do S.H.I.E.L.D. because we can hit all these different pieces in the Marvel
Was her name
universe."
in Alias Jessica?
Yeah.
I forget.
Yeah, it was
Jessica
always
Jones.
Jessica Jones.
Okay.
Yeah, it was always Jessica
Except,
Jones. It was
the
named
J.J.
Alias,
Abrams
but-
took the
subtle,
title.
Yeah. I know, but I liked how they addressed some of that, the Alias stuff in it. The door. What I can't remember within the first 5 minutes because it happened so fast. Was the door the original glass that she had? Was that the same font and everything as the Alias door from the show?
I don't think so.
Probably.
It may
I
be,
think
but
it was because when they slam him through the door, it shatters it and then it goes back to. And I thought, at first, that's a cool Easter egg if it's what
Right.
I thought it was.
J.J. Abrams stealing the name Alias.
Well, but even just kind of saying out with the old, in with the new.
Right, that's fine. Jessica Jones is a little bit more clear,
Mhm.
especially for people who don't know what it is.
I like how they've addressed, well, you're a superhero, shouldn't you be with the Avengers? But they didn't say the Avengers. They've used other terms and things like that. I love how they've done this. I love how they've addressed it.
Especially since they probably won't do Defenders anymore.
See, I don't think
no,
that-
that's still on the. That's still.
I know, but
that's
it's
still
just
on the
it's one of
docket.
those things like Inhumans. I think in the next 2 years you're going to hear them go,
They
"You
may
know what?
change
We're
it."
not going to make an Inhumans movie." You've already had changes. Where
Do you
you
think
moved,
they are
they
gonna
moved
sh-
Daredevil season 2 up, and now they're already talking about using either Moon Knight or Punisher in place of something else,
instead of Iron Fist.
or doing Iron Fist shorter, or something.
Yeah.
It's all it's an
all
organic
fluid.
beast.
It's
Yeah.
all fluid, and that's for me. I am of the mindset. I take things at face value until there is a confirmed change.
Would you like a Iron Fist show, or would you like to see him with
Iron Fist. I don't care about anybody else. That's
you
the one
you
show.
wouldn't rather see him with Luke Cage?
I
No.
would, but I
No,
would.
the second season.
But if they got rid of the Iron Fist show and then said Luke Cage will be about both of them now, I'd be fine with that. If they said season 2 of Luke Cage will have Iron
No,
Fist
see,
in
that's
it,
what I'd love to see.
I would be happy as long as I get Iron Fist.
You do Iron Fist as Kunlun and all of the martial arts and the Thunderer and everything.
Right.
Completely out of New York.
Oh yeah. That's what I would
Which you could do. But for me, it's like
or you can do it as the recent series that Kari Anders did,
which is really good.
which is really good. I think is a very nice basis because it goes back and forth.
Yeah.
It's a flashback sort of thing. They could do that. Danny owns his building. He's got all this money. He doesn't know what the hell to do with himself. He thinks back to how he became the Iron Fist and all the other people that are there and all this other stuff that are going on.
Would you add
What
Stick
I
into
want-
it?
as long as I get Iron Fist as a main character somewhere, I don't care what happens.
I think they're saving Iron Power Man. I think they're saving Heroes for Hire.
Would you add Stick into it to tie it in?
You need it. You would need Stick, I think, and you would need the actress who played the drug queen, the drug czar in Hell's Kitchen, who was going back to Clun Lao
Yes.
at the end of.
That's right.
That's all. Again, Iron Fist is a strange beast because there was already talk of rumors.
Well,
and I don't
do you remember in
Stick was
Daredevil?
Stick was Iron Fist. Am I missing?
No. Stick was in Daredevil though.
Stick was
right,
in
right.
Daredevil.
But you bring him
Stick
back
trains
into the
Daredevil.
Yeah, if you bring him back for the Iron Fist show,
It ties it in.
because the implication is the hand and
Oh, okay.
you know.
I'm trying to I don't remember Stick
'Cause
being
if
in
you
the original
remember-
Iron
No.
Fist thing.
If
you
the
remember-
original Iron Fist story.
in the
but you bring him back
Daredevil
because the
show,
implication in the show was he knows of Kun Lao.
Right.
but even in the show, the drug had the symbol on it.
Right. Which
Yeah.
is why she's an important character to
Mhm.
bring back because she's going back to a place that's
Because you can even
farther
do it,
away
you can just
than
do it
China.
as the tournament.
Yes.
I mean, if you read the Secret Wars version of Master of Kung Fu,
Right.
it has Iron Fist in it because it's all of these. It's basically the Dragon Ball Z tournament. It's the champions from all of these different disciplines and areas that get together.
Mortal Kombat.
That could be I mean
Doing
that's
Mortal Kombat.
that's basically what it is. And again, all you have to do is a kung fu show. You just need
Right.
an arena. You don't have to build. You have a very nice vista. Here you go. Here's Kun Lao, and here's the floating city. You buy the computer, and now we're inside in a dojo, and now we're in an arena, and that's it.
Mhm.
So it's not, and it can still be very, very good with it. I would love it because I want a martial arts show again. I thought it would be
Yeah.
cool.
Now,
Because fudge, I forgot. to
Which
put
is why
second
once
episode into
the
balance.
rumor, again, listen to believe half of what you see and none of what you hear, we may do Moon Knight instead of Iron Fist, and that's why I was like, okay, until somebody confirms something.
see, they had mentioned Moon Knight back when we were.
They did a long time ago, but recently, because of all the shifts in the Marvel universe, the talk was that they wanted something that's Batman-like,
Right.
So they may use Moon Knight. But I go, it's like, but I don't
Well, I'm also-
care.
But then you're also wondering, there's that outside rumor that probably isn't anybody in Marvel. It's just other people saying, depending on
Yeah.
what John Berthnall's Punisher is in season 2 of Daredevil. If people love that character,
They may put him
they
in
may
the
put, I mean, look what
Defenders.
happened with Daredevil. They're like, hey, Daredevil. They put Daredevil out. This is more popular than we even dreamed. Guess what?
Season 2.
Daredevil 2 is coming very quickly.
Well, you heard
much
what
quicker
they-
than it was supposed to be.
Once they announced Daredevil season 2, they changed their whole format. They
Yeah.
said from now on it's going to be one repeat, one new show a year.
Right, and Luke Cage is still up, and that's why until somebody says otherwise.
Well, even then, I don't think you'll see a second season
Well,
of
also,
Jessica
like-
Jones before you see
Oh, I
another
think
original.
so.
What I'm wondering
I don't
is,
think so.
what if they use the second seasons of these shows because of course they're gaining traction, they're becoming
Yeah.
popular. But what if they're using the second seasons to basically, test the waters with these new characters?
Yeah, I mean that's basically what
forget,
almost everybody
like talking
does.
about Daredevil
Hey,
2,
you
we're
could
having
do-
Punisher. Punisher's a great character. Everybody loves him. Wow, let's give him his own
And
show.
you could give
know?
Punisher a show far easier than you could a movie because you could do what you want in a show.
Right.
If they
Yes.
went Garth Ennis's Punisher Max for Netflix, you're gonna have a lot of happy Punisher fans.
Yeah,
Especially
you
with
do
Netflix.
Punisher versus Monk, or you build him off of another crime family or
Right.
whatever you want to do.
Which
or
brings me
Remnants,
to my next question.
a Rose.
Netflix
Admiral.
shows, the Netflix superhero shows versus network TV super shows.
Better
Which do
because
you,
they can do what they want.
It's just it's a different beast. I mean, it's just
It is a different beast, but
Network
I
shows are tied down to so many things.
They're
No,
tied-
that's talking about
Yeah.
doing.
You know?
That's talking about trying to do a zombie show on CBS. And
do you
doing
think
one
it depends on the
AMC.
character?
no, like
No.
if Flash was on Netflix, I'm sure you'd have a show of very different quality, vastly different quality, and also
The
with
tone would
with
be
a
different.
different level, with a different tone, and I'm sure they could have a lot of fun. But also, you'd get higher caliber actors to work for Netflix because Netflix is looking for very specific kinds of actors.
Well, I think that's also going to be based on what what kind of money you're offering
Right.
too. And Netflix money doesn't seem to be. Look,
Netflix.
you look at,
Netflix.
look
is
at the first
paying
season
out
of
better than
Daredevil.
everybody else.
But you look at the first season of Daredevil. There's nobody there that's a name actor. It's not like they
Vincent
pulled it.
D'Onofrio.
Vincent
But that's the
D'Onofrio
thing.
is not that big.
He's a huge actor.
He's
He had a
not-
lot of years on Law and Order.
Yes, he had a lot of years
He
on
was
Law and
a
Order.
huge film
What you seem to be
actor.
talking is like you're going to get somebody for Flash. You're going to get somebody who's like a big movie actor. It's just Vincent D'Onofrio is a great. Yeah, it's fine.
No,
But that's the
not
thing,
so much
is
you're
that
going to
you
get a
can
big, but you're going to get
find
a better
Rosario
caliber
Dawson?
of actor.
Rosario Dawson. She's in 4 episodes. Who cares?
Right? No,
Dude,
but I'm
she
not
was
talking
in
about. I'm not talking about. I'm not
Pluto
talking about.
Mars, or not Pluto
Yeah,
Mars.
so
Pluto
great.
Nash.
She did
Pluto Nash,
She
that's
did
it.
Clerks too.
Right, but she's also a really good actress.
She's a
Yeah,
talent.
no, I'm not downing the
No,
talent.
but you're
What
going
I'm
to get
saying
the,
is
you're
what
going to get a
starting-
better caliber of actor than you would
I don't
for
think so.
the CW.
I don't think so.
What my
No.
point was, Flash. The Flash
I think
show-
if you get a different caliber, it's because you're offering them a different product. If you're doing
Right.
the Flash as something very
Because
different,
the Flash is
if
still
you're
teen
doing,
drama.
if you're doing a hardcore, if you were to do Arrow on Netflix and you do an older Ollie Queen, you do the Mike Rowe Ollie Queen, you're going to get a total different group of people playing those characters because you'd have to. If you were to do Green Arrow on Netflix, I think you would do something more akin to Longbow Hunters, that era. An older Ollie, he's living with Dinah. Dinah is living with demons inside of her because she's just been raped. He's in Seattle. He's not even in Starling City. He's in Seattle. He's in a brand new
You said Starling. City.
Starling, Star City, whatever.
Yeah,
All of that
cities
is
change
very
their names
different.
very
So the
often.
different you'd have a much different sense of talent because you're not going to go hire a 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid to play him. You've got to find somebody older. You're not going to hire Katie Cassidy to play Dinah because you need somebody who's
Right.
older. That sort of thing. So yes, you'd have a different caliber of people or a different type of person. It almost there's nothing wrong with the caliber of people that are there for the type of show that Flash is.
Right.
Everyone in it is
It's teen
fantastic.
drama.
Yeah.
But not even the type of show. Here, and this is where I was getting with this question was, for Flash, the character Flash, it works very well on the CW. You couldn't put Punisher on CW. You couldn't put him on ABC because of just the nature of the character.
Well,
if you did, it's a very, very, very watered down character. Even Arrow.
Yes,
Arrow
but
could be.
that is the nature of television. But I think if you were to put the Flash
That's the
on,
funny is they make
Yeah.
Arrow darker than Arrow actually is.
That is
Right.
true.
Arrow was darker than Green Arrow. He kills people in the first season
Right.
left and right.
But
Versus,
but if you were to
yeah.
put like Flash on television, because I mean the rogues, as beloved as they are, Mirror Master and Captain Boomerang, they're also. I think you would get a version of the villain that would be a little closer to how vicious they could be in the comics. Whereas in the show, everyone's just sort
I
of
never really get that. I mean, that's the thing with Gotham. I mean, Gotham is trying hard to be as dark as it can be,
but it's
you're still
also
on network television.
It has network television, and
Which that was my question.
Yeah,
My
I
thing
mean-
was Superman could work on television.
Superman would work great on Netflix too,
Whereas
because I think they'd also get a bigger budget.
Batman would work so much better as a series on Netflix.
See, I don't know. Netflix also has given bigger budgets to those shows too.
Okay, even if you want AMC, FX.
See, we've already seen budget concerns with AMC.
See.
I mean, if you want to talk about budget, look at the second season of Walking Dead.
Oh, I'm not even talking budget-wise. I'm just talking what you can do, what you can get
Yeah,
away
but
with.
that's what I'm saying.
doing.
But you're also if you put Flash on AMC, you're probably sacrificing ratings. Remember, we take Walking Dead out of the picture completely. Walking
Yes.
Dead is it's something completely different than anything anyone's ever seen before.
It's a phenomenon that's coming
and,
around.
and no one else has been able to replicate it. No one else has been
Right.
able to do these sort of things. We've seen FX just canceled Bastard Executioner after one season. Really expensive show that they thought would build off of Sons of Anarchy and this idea of Game of Thrones and all of these other shows. And they basically have a show in which a bunch of people die, nobody gives a damn, and it's canceled.
Did you make it past the
have-
first episode?
No, I never watched another episode.
I got through 20 minutes of it, and it was good. I didn't care. I've seen it
the
all.
first episode wasn't good until the end. It wasn't interesting until the end, and then it just ran into I've got 30 other things that I'm trying to
And
do.
that's what I had.
I don't care about it. We're arguing, dollars and donuts here because it's just a different sort of thing. Why is Daredevil on Netflix instead of ABC? Because Marvel wanted more direct control.
Right.
You have a network that ultimately they have to answer to ABC,
Mm-hmm.
which they own in a way. Disney owns both
Right.
and all that other stuff. But yes, Jeff Loeb answers to a different boss than Kevin Feige.
Right.
Well, it's
And,
still,
and
it's still
Loeb,
and you- and you
when,
can do
when
more.
Loeb is doing S.H.I.E.L.D., he's answering to a different boss than Netflix, in which he's pretty much the boss.
right. Well, Netflix is the way they have their thing set up is you make the product, we'll air it.
Right, but
Yeah.
I think the bigger thing about Netflix is that it's not so much that you can get away with more on Netflix. You can, but I think the bigger issue with Netflix is that it's an easier sell than it was would be on network TV. There's still a very big divide between television viewers and on Netflix viewers. You could get away far easier with a Daredevil, or I mean, you could get away with like even Supergirl would be an easier sell on Netflix than it would be on network TV, and that's not nothing against Supergirl is doing very well for itself, but again, Superman, I think when it's on Netflix,
potential too. I mean,
you
people
have
still
different
look
potential.
at network TV. There's the potential there.
you'd have different potentials, but I think when somebody looks at a show,
You're also
on
looking at advertising. I mean,
Right.
that's the difference is
Yes,
why do
exactly.
you put it on TV? Because you still have advertisers pay for it. As great as Daredevil is, you don't have Coke going up to Marvel and going, "Hey, we'll pay you $5 million to
Right.
sponsor this."
Right.
That's coming.
Well, you
I
don't.
guarantee
You
that's
also
coming.
don't. You also.
It's going to be like a sports stadium.
You're
Daredevil
telling-
presented by
Hell,
Coke.
Even Jessica Jones, there's a bunch of like Samsung and Apple are all like
Red
prominent-
Bull.
Red Bull, they're all prominently.
Yeah, well,
That's,
that's
right. Rockstar. It's
that's a
Rockstar.
different-
Wild Turkey is on there. That's
Yeah.
the bourbon of choice.
But that's a different beast than having. If you turn on Jessica Jones,
you still have
and
to
you
answer
watch,
to the advertisers on
and
regular
you
TV.
watch the first. You get the title sequence, and then you get, "Mommy, what are we having for dinner tonight?" "We're having Coke." That's not a food. It's okay. We're still having Coke. They look at
Right.
the camera and they smile, and then you get into it. That's something completely
But
different.
then on your
than-
show, you better not say anything bad about Coca-Cola
Yeah.
because Coke is going to pull out. Which is again for me, like I look at
And even with the Samsung and the Rockstars and things like that, most of the time the Rockstar was turned around where you didn't see it. The Samsung, it's not like it. They're doing a pan from the logo up to Jessica, so
She looks at her phone, like POV voice.
Yeah, and it's Samsung right
But
on
that's
top.
because that's also the phone
The
they're
guy,
using.
one
Yeah,
of the
but
other
they
characters,
didn't use
got
that
his
phone
Apple
on
iPhone
accident.
up to
No,
his
they
phone.
probably went to Samsung and said, "Look, we need a phone."
They didn't go to Samsung. They just go
Samsung
to.
goes
They
to
just go.
them.
Yeah. Well,
That's right, Terry.
it's probably one of the. You have them just going to a marketing firm, going, "She needs to use a phone. Find
Right.
out who's going to pay for it."
Boom.
Right.
Hey, you know what? Samsung has a right phone. Apple doesn't have anything on theirs. Boom. Well, the other thing is
Which
also
phone does Disney own?
they tell a shorter
All of
story. You don't have to tell a 22,
right.
23
You don't
episode.
you're not locked down to TV. That's why I look at the internet version of television versus the regular. It's easier sell. Like someone would more readily buy Iron Fist as a character on Netflix because people give it more leniency because like it's just that internet thing, it'll never last, and people will be more willing to watch Iron Fist even if it's a little goofier, even if you get like again, even if you were to do like my ideal Luke Cage and Iron Fist show, which is a show in the 70s and it's them fighting street level crime and having fun, if you did that on Netflix,
If you do that, he's got to have
the tiara.
headband.
That's
Yep.
not going to fit. You can't set it in the 70s.
No, I know, but
They gotta
as
do
a
time travel.
as a thought experiment, that show would be an easy sell on Netflix because people go like, yeah, I'll check that out. If you put it on network TV, there would be like, I don't know about this. Would that work? There'd be a lot of hemming and hawing about whether or not the content works.
Look, you're also not beholden to 22 minutes or 52
right.
minutes.
You could tell a story how you want it, when you want
Uh-huh.
it, and people binge
It's the old
watch.
me watching Game of Thrones here. I'm like, how fucking long is this episode?
Right.
I thought it was only an hour.
Yeah, which is
So,
like the first, the
120.
first episode of Man in the High Castle, a show you can never get away with on regular TV. I guarantee it. Even though it's a very tame show, there's not a lot of cursing. There's not that when they shoot people, they're not really showing you a lot of blood, but just for the content alone.
It's a tone and a content thing. You're
Never-
not going
never
to
would be
sell
on-
CBS the idea that America has been taken over
by the Nazis and the
and
Statue
not
of
have it
Liberty
be
is
something-
is Zig
Yeah,
Heiling.
I mean, it would have to be so different
right.
than kind of the tone of what I imagine High Castle is.
So speaking of telling your own stories the way you want to tell them, Ethan, hit the segue button.
Segway.
George Lucas.
That was like so half-hearted.
Yes, it was. Do it again.
Segway.
Oh, come on.
That's
Give me
even- that's
because
even
this is a
worse.
good one.
Segway.
Oh my God, there goes my ears.
So, speaking of being able to tell your own story the way you want to tell it, George Lucas has finally broke the seal on his lips and
I
parted
think it's
it.
finally a seal. I don't think anyone really cared.
I don't think-
we've
Hell, he
known
probably didn't even care. He's
we've
just
known
like,
the
oh,
story
well.
that he's not involved. So
Right.
it's not like I don't think a lot of people were running to him going, "What happened? What happened? What happened?" This happens to be an interview that he did. That's going to, I guess, it's airing on CBS this morning at
I
some
think
point.
so, yeah.
I mean, he's had some relationship with CBS because the last big interview after he sold that company was with CBS
Uh-huh.
this morning too. But yeah,
he finally stepped up and said why.
He said that Lucas had come up with story treatments for a trilogy, but that was before Disney had bought it.
Oh, it was way before. It was back in the 80s.
Well, no, but he had something concrete to do 3 more films, and then Disney buys it. In their meetings or what have you, they decided they want to do something else. As he
Once
says,
they announced
quote, they decided they didn't want to use those stories. They decided they were going to do their own thing. They weren't that keen to have me involved anyway, but at the same time, I said, if I get in there, I'm just going to cause trouble because they're not going to do what I want them to do, and I don't have the control to do that anymore. All I would do is muck everything up. So I said, okay, I'll go my own way, and I'll let them go their way. He says, to continue the quote, the issue was ultimately they looked at the stories and they said, we want to make something for the fans. So I said, all I want to do is tell a story of what happened. It started here and went there. It's all about generations and issues of fathers and sons and grandfathers. It's a family soap opera. His story dealt with the grandsons of these characters from the original trilogy.
Well, he mentions
what it basically sounded like is he's dealing with brand new characters, and they were familial connections, just like, you know, you see Anakin from one to the other, but you never see Princess Amidala in the original trilogy. They were characters that were connected that you never saw. You never saw Senator. You never saw her father. You never saw Bail. You never saw these Jedi Masters or anything like that. Because then JJ went to say before he showed up. So JJ Abrams quote, before I showed up, it was already something that Disney had decided they wanted to go a different way with. The spirit of what Lucas wrote, both in those pages and prior, is everything that this movie is built upon. There's even fans that are questioning why there's no based on credit for George Lucas in the poster. J.J. Abrams' quote continues, I don't know why that isn't on the poster. It's a valid point. I'm sure there'll be a credit in the film. We're standing on the shoulders of episodes 1 through 6. So the point is that it was Disney. It wasn't J.J. saying, I don't want to do what George does. It was Disney from the start saying, we're going to do our own thing. We're going to bring in our own people.
Right.
This is kind of what we want to do. The further quote from that is, that isn't in this article. He's talking about that being a soap opera. It wasn't just about spaceships, sort of thing.
And that's what I was going to say.
The implication being is that Disney just wanted to make a spaceship film,
and they wanted to sell toys.
Well, yeah, so did George.
But what he says in there that this is a soap opera film, not about spaceships, not about action figures and selling toys. And I was,
and a lot of people are saying like, well, that's what the first 3 films were. You just made spaceship films. The flip of that is also, as I said after that first trailer, I really hope the movie has half as much heart as the trailer does, because the trailer has a lot of emotion in it. Now, we'll see. There's still this open possibility, and no one seems to be talking about it anymore, this open possibility that we're going to go see this film, and it's going to be a piece of shit.
That is very true. The best parts we've
More
already
than
seen.
likely, it's not from what we've seen and what we hope, but it's out there. As someone said, the first trailer came out, and one of my friends on Facebook was like, this is amazing. This is incredible. And the first comment from one of his friends was, yeah, we both said the same thing about episode 1.
That's true.
We loved that episode 1 trailer. The first trailer for episode 1 was fantastic.
It's a great trailer.
They did a great trailer. And they're following that marketing plan as we keep seeing TV spots that are connected to each character. In episode 1, they were doing TV spots based on different themes, on honor and friendship and stuff like that.
Right.
And so whatever it is, it is what we know that George doesn't have a connection to it, and now fans are like, yay! Also, have to remember,
which is dead.
You don't have any of this.
Do you think people will say that about Doctor Who when Moffat's gone?
Yes.
See, Moffat's.
They said it about Thatcher. They'll say it about Stephen Moffat.
This is a different beast, though. Moffat is standing. George created all of this. He created this world. He allowed the people that came in at the time. Why do we love Star Wars so much? Because of Empire. George Lucas had to hire Lawrence Kasdan and Irvin Kershner.
And that was exactly
my next point. And yes, maybe he makes the mistake because Kershner probably should have directed Return of the Jedi or someone like him.
And he quit Return of the Jedi.
Well, basically, the rumor is Lucas wanted more of a yes man.
Right.
He had problems with Kershner in Empire. And again, he owns it. He gets to do whatever he wants.
We've talked about that.
Yeah, so it
is his property. He can. It's his backyard. He can do whatever he wants.
I'm excited to see someone else do it because I've always enjoyed what other people have done with it. Some of my favorite Star Wars stories are obviously stuff that never has anything to do. It's stuff written by Tim Veitch. It's stuff written by Michael P. McDowell. It's stuff written by Michael Stackpole. It's stuff written by Timothy Zahn. It's stuff written by Karen Traviss. So he built this world that other people are going to play in. I'm excited to see what JJ and company, and of course he hired a whole bunch of people that have worked on Star Wars before.
Right.
Lawrence Kasdan's a part of this.
But we've talked about this before, where we've said George is great at coming up with the creation, the concept. He did it with Indiana Jones. He did it with Star Wars. Even Willow is a great idea. But what he did
Exists in the Star Wars universe.
for the best ideas, or for the best movies of of his ideas, were the collaboration with other people.
Well, let's remember, we all love Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote Star Wars and he directed Star Wars.
Correct.
A New Hope is all him. It's all him.
But if you ask the majority of people what their favorite Star Wars film is, 99% of the time, people will tell you Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
My 8-year-old daughter will tell you Empire Strikes Back.
Well, that's because she just listens to you. But it's yes. Let's not forget, he built a world that a lot of people play it. Gene Roddenberry built a world in Star Trek.
Correct.
Even their own people could not wait until Gene Roddenberry died so that they could start writing stories that were more dramatically. When he dies in the middle of DS9, who was it? Who was the producer or whatever?
He died middle of Next Gen.
Or Next Gen. And,
Yes.
and basically those edicts finally fell away. The crew was allowed to hate each other and stuff like that. DS9 is a completely anti-Roddenberry show. They could have
Right.
never developed that show. Your idea that your first officer and your captain are not exactly on the same page, that never would have happened. A lot of the conflict that you saw, you go back and watch those first episodes, there's no conflict between
Do
the
you
crew.
think, as a creator, and as a person that's created things, it's very hard to let other people play? And I mean, you and I have gone back and forth when we've been writing on something that I've created.
But that's you never create something that's just yours. Even
Right.
people that are like written, created. You
But
still
when
have,
you
you
s- when
still
you
have an
have
editor.
something-
You still have something. If you write a book, if you look at a Stephen King book, that's not just Stephen
If
King.
you get, and I understand, and I know from
Well,
my own experiences, when you become so tunnel visioned and so narrow minded that you don't let other people's opinions affect you.
That's the
why I don't work
interesting
with you
thing.
anymore.
that's sort of the interesting dichotomy. If we're looking at
it's
George
true.
Lucas, if we're looking at George Lucas and Gene Roddenberry has a very positive outlook of the future and he had a very specific vision.
Mm-hmm.
But he also was a man who understood good story. So even by season 3 of Next Gen, he let Rick Berman. Rick Berman's like, look, it's very hard to get, and he was like, I understand. And he pulled back, and then that's when season 3 of Next Gen is amazing, because that's that big shift where he's like, I understand the concerns. I know
It's
good
working
story.
in the 60s isn't working in the 80s. and
Yes,
90s,
exactly.
whatever.
And he understood that and was willing to let go. George Lucas, by Return of the Jedi, was, I want my toy money. Design cute was his edict for the Ewoks, because originally the fight was going to be on Kashyyyk. Irving Kershner would not let him do what he wanted. And Irving basically quit, and George got a guy who was basically going to give him everything he wanted. Han Solo was going to die. Well, your toys sell too well to die. I'm sorry.
Well, he also wanted a
Harrison
more
Ford.
positive ending for it.
Right.
Look,
Which
hey,
is-
the way Harrison Ford's been with this movie,
As they
I'm
said-
glad he didn't die.
Well, here's the thing: is the remember some of the stories that have come out from this. The original vision of Jedi was much different. The
Right.
rebellion was supposed to be in tatters at the end.
Right.
But
They
you even
throw
look at
everything at the Empire. Han dies. Princess Leia, Luke goes off into the sunset. Like I don't give a crap about.
What do you
any
think
this
of
stuff
the idea
anymore.
that
And-
But you also look at Crystal Skull, which is the movie that everyone has said was a chore to work on because he was not going to give ground on anything.
Mhm.
I mean, anything.
Well,
Even
that's
down
a-
to the point where, as much as, nuking the fridge became Jump the Shark for films, and George is like, it was a good idea. I'm sorry you guys didn't like it. And you even have Steven Spielberg who's like, no, it was really me.
Well, I think
trying
a lot
to
of,
take the heat off of
here's
his
the thing.
friend.
It's the same thing that I'm reading in here, where it's like, well, George is now saying it's our fault for not liking the movies. I think a lot of people are ascribing their personal feelings.
Right.
We've turned George Lucas into the villain,
Yes.
and he's
A
not.
lot of people have.
The thing, did you ever read the making of when they released
Yes.
the book that has all
Yeah.
4 films? The thing with Crystal Skull was George had all of these ideas, which were actually better 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
And Spielberg and Ford said, we're not doing that. That's dumb.
Look,
His original, reading that first kind of idea where he did want to put it in the 50s, he did want to do it with aliens. That was part of it, is he wanted to do it with aliens, and Spielberg and Ford are like, that's stupid. And he's like, why? You have a 9,000-year-old knight guarding the cup of Christ in the last movie. Is this really out of the realm that other beings exist in the galaxy
And
come down here? I think Spielberg was also like, well, I don't want to do Close Encounters again, and
yeah.
all of these sort of things. It was all these different things that came together that made that film so much later. And now, we look at it. We've had this discussion 100 times, probably maybe a dozen times on it, of there could have been something really great if they had
Yes.
really
uh-huh.
buckled down and said, "This is what this film's going to
Right.
be, and it's going to be much different."
Right. Yeah. If
That's not
they
what we
had
got.
told George like, okay, because basically they said, fine, we'll do it, and then they did it his way. The only thing even Steven Spielberg said that he buckled on, the only thing that he would really give any way on was like the original title of the film was Indiana Jones and the Invasion of the Saucermen, which is a great title.
Yeah, that's a really cool title.
If the movie was a little bit, more focused on the aliens, which
Well, that's what originally it was supposed to
be
be.
even more heavy. But even so, like even George's vision of the movie changed. But that was pretty much all they said he gave on. They named it Crystal Skull as like, look, the movie's not about aliens that much anymore. Let's change the title.
Right.
And he was like, fine. That's all. That's basically your one. Everybody gets one, and that's basically all anybody will say he gave on in terms of storytelling was fine. You can change the title. Everything else is my way.
Look, here's
And that to me is like it's like.
But there's a lot of creators that are that way.
There are a lot of
big
creators
time
that there are,
that
and
are that way.
I don't blame George exclusively for it. But you sort of look at that transition. You've got a guy who makes the original Star Wars movie, who has to work with the constraints of budget, and has a lot of people telling him like, maybe this will work a little bit better. Let's try this, and he's willing to listen. But then you have Empire Strikes Back, where he's very hands off because he's working on other projects. But then you get to the George Lucas of Return of the Jedi and Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which are basically you're doing it my way, whether you like it or not.
Right.
And to me, that's sort of like the tragedy of George Lucas as a guy who became so fixated on his final vision. When you look at the quality and tone of even the prequel trilogy, where that was another set of movies where it was all, what if we tried this, George? No. You're listening to me this time. I don't want another Empire Strikes Back on my hands.
And yet, at the end of the day, sold it for more than $4 billion.
Yes,
George
yes.
Lucas.
And that's the thing. It's like I don't blame him. It's his. Like I am.
That's. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about something like Battlefront, where people are like, "This game sucks. This game is terrible." One of the guys on my Facebook page was just like, "It sounds like," because they're already developing Battlefront 2.
Yes.
And they're like, "Well, it sounds like the internet's saying, we put a half-assed game out there for $110." And that's why we're making Battlefront 2. And I was like, no, you're missing the big part of the quote. We put a half-assed game out there for $110, and you couldn't fucking wait to pay for it.
Right.
So many of you, not you in terms of the
And now there are
table,
already people who have been burned on this game going, Battlefront 2 is
They're
going to
gonna
be the
fix it.
saving
They're
grace.
gonna
Look, here's the
fix.
thing. I bought the deluxe edition, and the only thing the deluxe edition had, now that it's come out, is one blaster, one card, and one emotion or thing.
Yeah, something like that.
And that was it for an
Can-
extra
can you
$10.
play like as a sad emoji?
No, the emotion things are stupid because
If you could play as like an emoji, that'd be
They're
great.
basically
I
like-
want the emo rebel that's just walking. I guess I'll shoot someone.
well, no, it's not even
We're
like that.
never gonna
Friggin'
win.
conformists wearing your gray and khaki.
Don't you understand? We're never gonna win.
No,
There's just so
with these
oh, but
emotion
that
things.
game would be awesome.
Oh yeah, we would. But the way these emotion things work, it's basically the taunting, Ethan, the taunting
Yeah,
phase
that's
in wrestling.
exactly what it is. It's
That's
it's
all
like
it
it's like a
is.
taunt. I mean, I kind of wish they would have gone the Battlefield route and
Big
actually
pop-ups.
had commands.
Yeah.
That's one of my other big pet peeves. There's no commands in this game. You can kind of be like that way, but there's no like there's no like go attack this, go attack that. There's no it's
Okay.
the caption to the the what's the live die repeat from the Tom Cruise movie, which is actually a really great movie. That's how I
I
feel.
was surprised at that movie. But anyway,
You were so mad when I saw
know.
that movie. I go to see that movie, and I come, he's like, "Why did you go see that? It was
was-
supposed to be a piece of shit."
it
And
was
I look at him and I go,
great.
like, "Every review have said it's good." He's like, "No, every review is terrible." Where? And Rich just picks up his phone. He starts scrolling. He's like, "No, I know I saw them. I know there were bad reviews here somewhere."
and I ended up watching it. I've actually watched it a few times.
Which
It's
was
really-
amazing.
Great adaptation of a manga.
So here's the thing, real quick on the George Lucas to wrap it up. George Lucas never wanted to be a movie house. He wanted to do independent
Right.
films.
Which is still his dream, and he
Yes.
has the money to do it. He just needs to buckle down and do it.
But here's the bigger picture.
$4 billion
If you look at the tail,
I would
of,
take it easy. It's like, oh,
if you look at the tale of Anakin Skywalker, is the tale of George Lucas.
George Lucas killed children?
yeah, he's a
A lot of people say they killed his child. He killed their childhood. George Lucas became Darth Vader. He became the Emperor. Everything had all the power had to be his.
End of the Return of the Jedi. So it's basically George Lucas
J.J. Abrams
being
as Luke Skywalker.
angry with the fans, so he throws Lucasfilm down the the cavern that is Disney. Is that the implication? I don't know. Where are you going with this, Rich? You gotta lay it out for me.
Look,
So wait, so the Emperor hits the bottom of the cavern, there's just like a big pile of money?
Yeah, that's
No!
I don't know.
Hey, this is pretty cool down here.
I
Look
see,
at all these credits. I can build all
I'm
of the
telling
Death
you,
Stars I
'cause
want.
listen-
because I see that and I go, it's like, so instead of the cavern, it's Disney, and Disney is saving Star Wars.
yes.
Because I sort of look at George
Disney
Lucas
is the
becoming
rebellion.
what he hated.
Well, he did, but
that's a big.
that's the part.
That's a big story. There's a great book from it's so many years ago. It was all these
Anakin became what he hated.
There's all of these different.
But he was always a dick in those movies.
But
he
still
He was always what he hated.
But he still became
He was
what
a
he
slave
hated.
to himself,
And he
then
hated
was a slave.
sand.
He hated sand, and he came back.
And
there's an
loved
old
CGI
book that's a bunch of
pairs.
essays on different Star Wars. One of my favorite ones is how I learned to love Episode 1. But there's one of those about George Lucas. George Lucas started out as an independent filmmaker, and what he did is he became independent by having a lot of money.
Yes.
Mhm.
And he could do whatever he wanted, because then once he did Star Wars, remember, no one wanted to work with him for Star Wars.
Right.
Right.
Nobody with any cash. He had to go all over the place.
Well,
The beginning
Paramount,
of-
Paramount said no.
everybody
and-
said
yeah.
no, and he found, and the same thing. When he found 20th Century Fox, they're still like, we're not going to give you the money you want. You're going
Right.
to have to go find the money somewhere else. We'll distribute it, but we're not going to give you a lot of cash for this.
Uh-huh.
And that's why he turned like, well, if you're going to make me find the cash, I'm going to keep all the rights. Smartest thing he ever did. He didn't become what he hated as much as he just sort of became something completely different. Somebody who wanted to be a maverick and an independent, who had a whole lot of money and did what every creative endeavor does, in which you get super, super scared that you're going to screw it up. This is comic books. Frank Miller and Daredevil. Let's go all the way back to Daredevil. Daredevil is a title about to get canceled. It's one of the oldest characters of Marvel at the time in the 80s. They don't know what the hell to do with it. They give it to Frank. They're like, here, okay, you write it. Just write whatever you want. We don't care. We're going to cancel this book anyway.
Do what you want.
He does whatever he wants. He gets about a year and 2 years into this story, and it's amazing. And then they stop him and say, do it again. I want you to do exactly what you did for the last 2 years. Just keep doing it. Because now we're so scared that if you do something different, it's going to fail. We've seen all these successes because we've done something different. We look at something like Daredevil, the Netflix Daredevil, and it's a success because it's different. And now we're going to get Jessica Jones and Iron Fist and Punisher and Moon Knight and Power Man and all of these that are going to be pretty much the same thing because we're afraid of doing something different. What did I complain about after I saw Ant-Man? It's just a Marvel movie.
Right.
Marvel was such a different sort of thing when we saw Iron Man. We saw a big superhero story with a great budget and great acting and great directing, and we saw it with Iron Man, and we saw it with Thor, and then we saw it with Avengers, and then we saw it with Cap 2, and we're like, this is awesome. And then you get to Ant-Man and go, I've seen this 30 times. This is exactly what Marvel does. This isn't a big stretch. Everyone's
And
like,
that's why
Ant-Man.
Guardians was such a hit.
No, Guardians wasn't a hit. Guardians is a Marvel movie. It's Avengers in space.
It
And
is, but
no,
it was
it's-
something different.
No, it's not. It's not a different film. It's got a different background. It's the same
You
film.
probably think it's the same because you've seen the same movie 4,000 times.
It's
I haven't seen it
is-
this week.
it
This is probably
fits-
the first week in a year I
it
haven't seen it.
fits into the mold of what makes a Marvel film a Marvel film. Why do we love Daredevil so much? Because it exists in the Marvel universe and it's not like a Marvel film.
Yes.
Why do we hate S.H.I.E.L.D. so much? Because it exists in the Marvel universe and it's not enough like a Marvel film. We get put into that box, into that mold. It's a great mold. It's a great box. People love being in it. But by the time you get to even Avengers 2, you're looking at it going, this is kind of the same thing. Why did we love Cap? It feels a lot different than a lot of the other films because it's not a superhero film.
So do you think
an action film?
George Lucas making the same? George Lucas fell into his own trap, basically.
Well, that's it. I've said for the last 2 years, if you really look at it, he didn't make the same films.
Correct.
That's
No, he didn't.
my fear is that J.J. Abrams is going to make Star Wars.
Just remake New
We
Hope.
already know what Starkiller Base is.
Yes.
It's got a lot of the same ships.
And for me,
It's got a lot of the same characters.
I've seen
That is
J.J.
fair.
Abrams do Star Wars. He called it Star Trek.
Well, there's a lot of people that have said that now. That the Star Trek
That's
movie
what it is. Like even
is foreshadowing.
even
to this.
watching just watching that first movie is just like they turned Jim Kirk into like a country bumpkin who needs to get out
He's Han
from
Solo.
middle America. No, he's Luke Skywalker. They even have a shot where he's like staring off into the sun.
So Pike is Obi-Wan.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean,
And at that point, it's like, yeah,
if you
I've
do the
seen
Star
JJ
Trek
Star
analogy,
Wars.
why do so many Star Trek fans love Deep Space Nine so much is because it was different
It's
than
so
anything you
different.
saw. It's stationary, literally a station. The characters are so completely different. The where the characters came from were so different.
Because
So do
you're
you
going, and for Deep Space Nine, you're going out into the universe of Star Trek, and you've moved away from the Federation.
Do you think Rogue One will be more popular, or will be a better
Rogue
movie?
One will be interesting because they're selling it as a hard war film.
Yeah, it depends. How different are they going to get?
Right.
If you have the, we're looking at episode 7. We haven't seen a rating for it yet because we're all just. It's got to be PG-13, doesn't it? That's going to be very different. Revenge of the Sith was PG-13.
Yes.
There was no reason for that to be PG-13.
Right.
The only
reason it was
PG-13
PG-13 was because a bunch of kids got slaughtered.
Well, no,
And the end
that
of it,
was because of the end.
It's the last third of it because he starts slaughtering a whole bunch of people. When he shows up on Mustafar, he just cuts people in half for no reason. If it's in tone with we've said that we're kind of scared that this whole thing is just a fan. Great, a love letter. That's great. I don't blame George for episode 1, 2, and 3 because he looked and said, "I'm not making the same 3 films.
Right.
I'm making a much more complex film that's really in a completely different galaxy." One of the fears that I saw when we first started realizing what some of this was, when we went to Celebration,
Right.
and it says, well, the TIE fighter, post-TIE fighter is a part of the Resistance. Wait, what? We're going to get a film where there's still the rebellion?
X-Wing.
And still no, not at that. There's still the rebellion.
You said Poe's TIE Fighter.
Whatever, Poe's X-Wing. The fact that this faction is called the Resistance.
Yes.
And we're like, really?
Yeah, what happened
Again?
at the end of number? Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
but that's the thing.
That's the no, that was my big question.
If-
It was like,
if
but
we're getting-
6 ends so well with the
and
what's
what
going
they're
down?
doing, what
What
it sounds
happened
like
in the last
from
30 years.
Well, that's the thing, is that's part of the story that we're discovering is what happened in between and what's different. That might be the more interesting story. The interesting part of the EU is how does this change? How do you get to the end of the Legacy series when you're going into the Jedi series or whatever, and you have a galactic republic that's made up of the Empire and the Republic together. It's different.
Well,
Those
the most interesting
those
thing-
first 3 films are very, very different than the prequels are very different than the first 3 films. If Episode 7 is really just the original trilogy again, we've had a lot of time. But someone like me that grew up with, I'm not interested in the same thing.
But the most exciting.
Maybe I am. I don't know. Maybe I'll enjoy it and I'll go, hey, this is just like Star Wars.
The most exciting thing about the expanded universe is literally in the name. It is the expanded universe. You're learning
Yeah.
more than just what happens with these certain characters that we've seen in the movie. That was what was so interesting. Yes, a lot of the books and things dealt with those characters, but it expanded out from what it was.
Well, it's just, what the different sort of person that Luke is. This reestablishing the Jedi Order and stuff like that. It's something different.
Okay. So speaking of something different, real quick, Battlefront is beginning some very, very mixed.
That's not different at all.
Getting some very, very mixed reviews.
It's not getting mixed reviews. It's getting
horrible reviews.
It's getting.
but it's making the money.
Yeah, but
Well, yeah,
it was going to
that's-
make money anyways. It didn't make Fallout
That's
money.
not a mixed review.
Look, here's the
Transformers
thing.
4 was terrible. It made a lot of money.
The Battlefront got meh reviews, and
The
it
online
made money
reviews,
because
what
it's
do you think?
stories.
Mostly negative, mostly positive.
No, they're very everyone has basically said the game is not worth the price. Fun, but not worth the price, and the gameplay is meh.
I've seen the reviews that I'm seeing are. I kind of wish I didn't pay as much for this.
Right.
Down to, I got ripped off.
Right.
Okay.
No
Ethan
one has said outright bad, but everyone's gonna come.
Well, one person did.
One person, but everyone's gone.
But that was
meh,
different.
Meh.
Ethan, Chris, you both watched me play for a little bit today. What did you think of what you saw?
It just it's a first person shooter with a Star Wars skin, which is exciting maybe 20 years ago, but when you have really good FPSs that are out there, if you're going to give me Star Wars, I can't just I don't want to play Halo and instead of Master Chief I'm playing as Stormtrooper.
Yes.
It's just, it's got to be more. It doesn't feel like it has anything to do with the universe. That's the problem when you don't have a story mode. When you have the story mode for the PSP game, you're fighting as this rebel faction, this this special forces group that's in there. I feel like I'm in a Star Wars story.
Right.
I have to do something.
There is no Star Wars story to this.
There
It's
is
just-
no Star Wars story. You're switching every time you play
Right.
on multiplayer.
Yeah, the reviews
From-
are it's not worth the price.
Yeah.
That is
if you
the crux.
give me a Star Wars story, if you give me hours of gameplay in a Star Wars story where I'm following whatever,
A brand new story that's
a brand
set
new
in Star Wars.
story. If you would have had a story where you start off as a clone trooper and you go through those last 2 films, and then you become a stormtrooper and you go through the original trilogy, And then on the other side, you play as a member of the Confederate systems, and you go through the last 2 films, and then you become a part of the rebellion fighting the Empire. That to me is an interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you say, okay, after you're done with this, you then get to play with 1,000 other people online, and you get all these cool weapons and stuff. I have no problem with that. When you're just basically saying, I'm going to give you Titanfall, I'm going to give you the online Halo, I'm going to give you Battlefront, I'm going to give you whatever. But instead of an SMG machine gun, I'm giving you a DL7 gun, and it's lasers instead of bullets. I mean, it looks cool. We sat here today when you were playing on Celeste. I'm like, oh look, there's a Super Star Destroyer up in the air.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything.
If
the story is you have to get up to the Super Star Destroyer and destroy it,
Right.
That's a Star Wars story.
Because
there just isn't a Star Wars story there.
It does. That's the thing is like because it's lacking the Battlefront, the Battlefront trappings from the original Battlefronts, where it's like, yeah, at some point in the game, if you're playing multiplayer, you could jump into an X-wing, fly up to that Super Star Destroyer, and then continue the battle there. This game doesn't have that. But the big reviews are it's not worth it for the price you pay, and the gameplay is pretty generic.
It's very generic.
But everyone is praising the game on its aesthetic and its product.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it looks great.
But also, when people say it's like, well, it just plays like every other FPS, really, what more are you going to do?
Right.
There really just isn't anything else to do except make it bigger, make it.
Well, that's not necessary. But then again, that's also from a console perspective. I mean, if you have games like Team Fortress, and you have games like Overwatch, which Blizzard just put out, which are trying to mix up the way FPSs play, which aren't available on console. But that's the thing is like if
you also have to trap it within that Star Wars universe. You
Yes.
don't have like you see those games that the old games where you had like guns that were crazy. You had gravity guns where you'd put it in the ground and then everything flips or whatever.
There's nothing really. There's nothing.
You can't.
There's
do
no
that.
specialty, and that's the thing is like the game is a generic shooter, and that's sort of what everyone's problem is like. Well, it was and they sold it as more, and they didn't deliver on it. But that's neither here nor there.
I played the game for a week, and here's what I think. I think that it is a very generic FPS shooter with a Star Wars skin on it.
Yes.
Which is what is making it appealing. What I feel like with this game is that Star Wars, Disney, Lucasfilm, and everybody said, we have a big movie coming out. We need a video game.
Make this game as fast as possible.
You know what? What's the best type of game to get out there for the masses of people?
Call of Duty.
People love Call of Duty. People love Halo. Give me a first-person shooter.
Yeah.
Do we need a story? No, because people will buy it because it's a Star Wars game.
And that's not good. Like for me, anyways. Everything you were saying is very like.
That's what we said 2 weeks ago.
This is all bad.
People are going to buy it because it's
and I'm not. That's not a criticism to you. Everything you're saying, rapid fire sounds exactly like what somebody said in a meeting.
A casual thing is to get somebody who doesn't already play first-person shooters to buy it because it's a Star Wars first-person shooter. It was Command and Conquer that became Empire. Was Empire War the first time they did the Command and Conquer style game? 10 years ago or whatever, and they made it
like
in Star Wars. You're like, this is awesome but it's the same game. But for someone like me that never played any of Warcraft or Command and Conquer the way Warcraft used to be, the strategy games, you playing it as Star Wars was appealing to me because I'm like, cool, I know all the stories. Yeah, it's
as
Star
a
Wars.
casual FPS player or gamer, if I'm going to sit down and play a online multiplayer game that an FPS game, I would much rather have a Star Wars skin than Halo or Titanfall or something else because when you get online, they're all the same game.
That's fair enough.
That's
why it's so expensive.
The one thing that I wish they had was that your weapons you could upgrade or you could do different things.
Right.
Even with
none of that's on there.
No, and even with customizing your character, you don't get real full customization. No. You just get a couple different facial expressions or genders and things like that.
Well, there were earlier ones that you could play as a Wookiee, and it was such a different character.
And that's the thing is the game made money, which is why they're already going on to number 2, which means this game will be forgotten even faster by the developers. But I also sort of go like. Yeah, but then you look at something like Fallout 4, which made $750 million in 24 hours, and that's where the shock came for me. Fallout 4 was one of the most anticipated games for the last couple of years, and it delivered on its anticipation in terms of the money it made. I was expecting Star Wars fans to come out in droves for this game. The game did really well and made a lot of money, and they're getting a number 2, but it didn't make Fallout money, which was my surprise.
I give it a 5. Out of 10.
Okay, so middle of the road.
It's a middle of the road.
It's
average.
Those user reviews and those type of things came out in enough time that someone like me that 6 months ago or E3, I'm looking going, maybe I will buy a PS4. I want to play this game. This is going to be on. It was early enough for me to say I'm not worried about it.
Because when I look at Metacritic and I see Battlefront is at like 6.7 or something, or a 7, that's not bad. That's just meh. That's meh. That on a scale from 1 to 10, if you're a 6 or a 7, that's D plus, C minus. So average is what I look at that as, and that seems to be exactly what they delivered on. But in a world of games where you need to be above average to make it somewhere, like Metal Gear Solid 5 surprised everybody, and not only did it deliver on a really great game, the reviews reflected that across the board. You can't, you gotta be above Halo, because Halo's just going to, if you're trying to be Halo, Halo's gonna beat you.
My feelings of the game are exactly what I just said a minute ago.
Because Halo has a story.
Yes.
This game is a game that they put out because there's a Star Wars game.
Yeah.
For me, I'm playing a Star Wars game
And you're happy.
in the middle of the Star
fine.
Wars hype. In 4 months, 3 months, maybe not even that long.
When it stops getting updates, you'll move on to the next game.
I will have set it down and I won't be playing it anymore. It'll be a game where, you know what, if Saturday night we're sitting here bored and everybody's like, let's
At least
do
you didn't
something.
pay $110.
No,
for
and
it.
I wasn't. And the guy, when he went to sell it, I said this last week. When I went to get it, the guy was like, he told my wife, there's no way your husband's going to get this. And as soon as I walked in and he started to try to sell his pitch to me, and I was repeating the pitch back the other way, he's like, I couldn't say, that you...
Yeah, and and it's not his fault. He's been told by somebody to get, upsell them, make sure they get the upgrade, whatever. But I go, it's like, but yeah, the fact that they've already said Battlefront 2's coming, guys, thank you. And that means this game's going to be dead even faster than I predicted.
Battlefront
Like
2,
I said-
they're just going to release the one that they finished like last year, right?
Like I said,
I wish.
if I want to sit down and get into a mode where I'm shooting Darth Vader or the Emperor or Boba Fett or Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, whatever, it's fun because I get to see familiar characters, familiar settings, and you know what? When the Battle of Jakku comes out, then I'll play that, and it'll be a little bit more exciting because it's a brand new immersement of the Star Wars universe. And then it'll be done.
Yeah, which is for me, like, that's why it's like hearing not only that, but like seeing all the reviews because the game's been out for a little bit now. I go, it's like, yeah, I'm happy I waited because then I won't mind paying $20 or $30 down the road when it goes.
Would
on
I
sale.
have rather paid $20 or $30 for this game? Yes. Do I think this game deserves to be $60, $70 like I paid? No.
And
am I glad
yeah,
I traded in a bunch of games and got it for half price? Hell yes.
And that's the thing, is that's when I kind of go, I think people would have been a lot more lenient towards the game if they did release it for $30 or $40 rather than 60 and 110.
Yeah, but no one's going to do that.
No.
They're not going to undersell the
Nope.
other one. I just want to know where the sequel to Masters of Terracassi is. That's all. I want.
Sitting in a vault somewhere.
No.
So on that note, let's wrap things up.
Yeah, 'cause your wife's probably really pissed.
She's already at the mall waiting us for dinner.
And very hungry.
I thought she was upstairs.
No, she's already taken off.
Yeah, I'm glad we said 10 minutes.
So make sure...
When you said that, I looked at you like,
45 minutes
what
ago.
the fuck is wrong with you? 10, 15 minutes. We haven't even gotten to the Lucas stuff yet.
So make sure you guys check us out on Facebook.com/Nerdables. We're also on Twitter @NerdablesShow, and check us out on our website, www.nerdables.com. I know you laugh every time I say the W's.
No. Chip Zdarsky retweeted something from Clark Kent. Breaking news: Jessica Jones sits backwards in a chair and smokes a cigarette at an Avengers meeting, and Thor's like, "Holy shit, this is crazy."
So on that note, we're just going to wrap things up. I have nothing to say after that.
Oh my